Now we gaze into the crystal ball 2021 with Ms. Aparna Gupta on tech trends. Ms. Aparna Gupta is an executive director, customer success for Microsoft India. She is responsible for India-based strategic customers and success on the Microsoft Cloud platform. She leads a strong technical team that engages and supports the customer throughout their cloud journey. Prior to this, Aparna was the General Manager India for Commercial Software Engineering at Microsoft. Also welcome Ms. Indrani Chaudhary, who is going to be the moderator for this very topic. Indrani has 20 plus years of experience with in-depth and proven expertise in sales and marketing, P&L management, digital transformation, program management, and consulting.
Great. Welcome to WIT Ignite 2020 Career Fest. I'm Indrani Chaudhary, Chief Learning Officer of Microsoft India. With the digital transformation and disruption in the country, especially post-pandemic, let's take you through some of the tech trends of 2021. And who's better to talk about this than Aparna Gupta, who is one of the most successful tech women leader of the country. For those of you who don't know Aparna, let me take a brief minute to introduce her. Aparna is an accomplished executive with over 25 years of experience with a passion for enabling organizations to innovate using technology. She is the Executive Director for Customer Success Unit for Microsoft India, and in her role, she is responsible for our strategic customer success on Microsoft Cloud Platform. She has rich experience in running several functions, including engineering, product management, analytics, and country operations. And in her current role, she leads a strong technical team that engages and supports the customer through their cloud journey. So Aparna, take the floor.
Hello, very happy to be here at the WIT Career Fair today. And I'll kick off with a brief about the trends that we anticipate to see in the coming years around technology. And then I will have one of my colleagues joining in for a brief chat. So let me share my screen and let's get going. So if I had to really crystal gaze about where we are heading and what should skilling mean in that context, let me maybe begin with a little bit of a history back in time and share just how some of the play has been. So as we all know, in the late 1700s, I think the first shift, and specifically in context of India, that we saw was the shift from manual labor to using tools and machines. So that was kind of the first revolution that we witnessed. Moving on, I think we went to a stage of just being able to do things at scale using mass production concepts, figuring out assembly lines and getting more into like a factory mode of operation. And this was a lot of the impetus in the early 20th century. Now, if you look at it, starting from the 50s is where it all kind of tilted towards digital technology. So whether it was advent of mainframes, large computers, the internet, I think it's been a steady kind of disruption of how what we have witnessed in the last 5 years, or every 5 years actually, to the point where if I look at 2016 per se, there are some very specific technology trends that we are seeing come as a thematic again and again. So whether it is Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, blockchain, in every single industry, they are disrupting the way business is done. And so a lot of the skilling is going to be focused around that, and we'll cover a little more of that as we move forward. So moving to the tech trends in 2020, and as we again know, we are seeing a lot of thematics across industries. But if I had to pick the top three, I think the first one I would talk about is just the sheer size and scale of data that's being generated. Whether it is from our mobile phones, whether it is machines talking to other machines, whether it is industry level kind of content that's getting generated, it's completely disrupting, kind of augmented with our computing power, and how quickly we can convert that into real-time business insights, as well as kind of use as a base of innovation. So that's and that's going to stay. It's not going anywhere because our computing power is just getting better, our cloud is getting more sophisticated, and so on. The second is that the fact that all of this is already available is taking the second leap, which is of how can we commoditize and make this available in the form of whether it's platforms or APIs or form where it is more democratized, so people are able to use it across their solution, their industries, and their expert areas without having to really limit themselves to go to a vendor or a partner to enable that. And so it is leading to the way I think about it as an API based economy, which is itself a very powerful concept, which is driving a lot more innovation at scale. And last but not the least, the low code, no code access in the hands of what we call as citizen developers is making this entire readiness of whether it is the API or platform create a foundation for very fast ideation and frictionless interaction, because of which we are just able to augment and multiply what we are able to do with some of these foundation principles. And we are going to see almost like an explosion in terms of how that translates into the digital journey of the industries. So if I had to look at in context of what does that translate to in terms of technology and what what we should see. So if I just quote from the World Economic Forum, so as you can see, the technology thematics are not very different. So whether it is cloud computing, which is almost like a foundation layer, or specific technologies that are driving innovation, whether it is AI or IoT, I mean those are absolutely there. But I would want to draw your attention on another very big horizontal, which is security. Right? So that as we go through this innovation and there is so much of data going back and forth, security is just a non-negotiable baseline, and no matter what solution, no matter what industry, and that's something we are going to see as an underlying principle as we go forward. In terms of specifically close to a home, which is India, I think that again the trends are not very different. I won't spend too much time on it. It is very similar that you saw on the previous slide, which is around cloud computing, security, IoT, big data, and the likes. So now if you switch gears and talk about, so what should we anticipate and how should we skill ourselves? I think what we are going to really see is that a really, really large number and percentage of our jobs will get replaced. And this is always a worry, all thought leaders have spoken about this, should we embrace change, should we be uncomfortable about this change? So I think the data is on the wall, which is that while there will be jobs that will be displaced and there will be this continuous kind of movement between humans and machines and what humans can and should continue to do while what the machines can do for them, whether it is in healthcare, whether it is in manufacturing or any industry for that matter. But on the positive side, it will for sure generate more jobs, right? So in absolute terms, is there something to worry? I don't believe so, right? Because it will just be improvisation. And we have seen this again and again in every kind of industrial revolution and disruption that humans have faced across centuries, actually. And so what that really means is that the path ahead is not that people will not have jobs, but the path ahead is that several or a very large percentage of our employees will have to reskill themselves and will have to improvise and have a growth mindset and be willing to reskill and do the jobs differently, the same jobs differently, or just do sheer entirely different jobs. And so I just want us to kind of pause and think in terms of, if I had to ask this question to all of you, like what is the most important skill we need to have, right? Because we have all these technologies coming, new ones coming in, older ones making either more front and center or getting on a back burner. So in my mind, the biggest and the most important skill that each of us need to have as a professional now is learnability. It is our ability to really grow, adapt quickly, and throughout our career, right? Gone are the days when a person could join a particular role in an organization and almost spend his or her entire career doing the same thing, being good at it, and going back home. I think learnability is going to define what the new professional looks like. And so if I more close to home and now, some of the emerging skills in context of India that have been kind of released by World Economic Forum are, and as you'll see, they're not technical skills necessarily, right? The top skills are problem solving, analytical thinking. And the reason for that is clear, right? Because those are some of the principles that you need to apply no matter what problem you're trying to solve, no matter which industry, no matter who or what scale you're trying to solve it. So a lot of these skills that you see on top are around that and less about the technology, and it's a given that that will become front and center. And so just a preview on the technical aspect of it in context of some of our statistics around working age population, which will be of the order of, say, 0.6 billion people, which is, again, the emerging jobs, which will be around AI, data analysis, information, and so on. And these are, again, some predictions based on, a lot of the trends that we are seeing both in context of India, but also globally. And so these, while give just a cue for us, maybe one specific part of it that I just want to spend a few more minutes on is artificial intelligence, right? Now, artificial intelligence has been a space which we have had a head start, and in this year, earlier this year, NASSCOM actually released a very comprehensive report of how this industry or this solution area has a proposition to create a $450 to $500 billion contribution to the India GDP, and not in like 10 or 15 years. It's not something far out, but it's something that's tangible and now, which is in terms of just the next 5 years. And in context of that, NASSCOM also goes on to talk about so what are going to be the key defining areas to succeed in this vision, this bold vision that we as India are setting out to be. So whether it is around the strategy the industry needs to take, the data, even aspects like privacy and trust around data and how we keep it secure and so on, the technology stack that we're able to use, do we have the skills to actually make it come real? Because if any of these pillars are missing, we will not be able to meet this bold ambition that we have set out to do. But on the other hand, if we meet all of this and then finally execute well, as the countries and the world comes out of this pandemic period, we will definitely reap the benefits, not just as a country, but as a professional and at every individual level. So just in context of this, maybe let me just share one last bit here, which is around some of the top roles that this will create, specifically AI, and so a preview into what that global data shows. So of course, a no-brainer, an artificial intelligence specialist job, and then all the way to, let's say, data engineers, data analysts, and so on. One thought I do want to leave, in addition to the list and the rank you see here, is even psychology, right? And we are seeing more and more professionals from other humanities background playing a key role in the success of AI in actually solving real world problems. And the reason for that is aspects like bias, right? Aspects like how well we are representing our data when we are trying to solve a problem. Aspects like, are we doing AI the right way? Are we doing AI or are we doing AI to influence people unknowingly? And if so, who's observing, who's paying attention to it, and what are the insights to draw? So you can see a role called insights analyst there. So a lot of these, I would say, the technical roles are obvious, so knowing, let's say, a language like Python, that's obvious, right? Or being a data scientist, that's obvious. But some of the less obvious roles are the ones which are actually going to define the success of this area. So I just wanted to kind of leave that thought with you. So with that, I will pause. And at this time, just end this part of the segment with a video. Hope you like it.
Do you feel that the world around you is changing faster than ever before, and that the rate of change is actually accelerating? Do you believe that the number of unknown unknowns is increasing? Well, you're not wrong. The pace of change today is exponential, and large organizations are struggling to find and spot new and radical ideas quickly, and seem unable to move fast enough to develop their potential. In the 20th century, size was power. But today, in this age of urgency, being big seems to be a disadvantage. Success means focusing not just on tomorrow, but on what the day after tomorrow will bring. We are arriving in a moment where a cocktail of new technologies are advancing the speed of change. This is a Wright brothers moment where key innovations can trigger a cascade of changes that transforms the world. These technologies are the engines of our future. Cloud computing is the new normal, where the smallest startup now has access to computing power at a scale that was previously only available to giant corporations or superpowers. Data is the new oil, and artificial intelligence will become so prevalent it truly becomes the new electricity. Internet of Things, machine learning, digital manufacturing are rapidly ushering in the fourth industrial revolution. New network-based logic, like blockchain, will have an impact far beyond cryptocurrency, creating a more secure, robust, and decentralized Internet of Trust. Augmented and virtual reality are changing the way we interact, bringing experiences to customers to an entirely new level. And if quantum computing lives up to its promise, the leap in processing power alone will drive breakthroughs that we can't even begin to imagine. So how do we accelerate our day after tomorrow thinking to survive and thrive in times of radical innovation? In a VUCA world, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, where new ideas, new technologies, and new business models can suddenly change everything, concentrating on the day after tomorrow isn't a luxury, but an absolute necessity. So it will be vital to embrace this exponential future of business, to understand that agility might be your company's single biggest asset. This is the time for risk-taking and long-term radical thinking, when you still have the time and the money to shift gears. So focusing on the day after tomorrow will be your best recipe for survival, to help you to remain both essential and relevant for your customers. Redesign your company in terms of culture, not structure. Find leaders who don't want to lead and employees who actually do. Hire thinkers, doers, makers, and rule breakers, and trust them. Avoiding risk isn't safe. It stops you from evolving. So embrace chaos, fight the status quo, and remember, the impossible is just a possibility waiting to be born. This is the age of urgency and innovation fueled by technology, and you have to be prepared. You have to reinvent yourself. There are so many tools, ideas, platforms, and people just waiting to be connected. If you are willing to learn, unlearn, and take radical new directions, you will find your day after tomorrow.
Hey Aparna, thank you so much for the wonderful insights, and I'm sure the audience here will really benefit and help themselves to skill for the future technologies. I would like to spend a few minutes to have a fireside discussion with you, and with that, can I start posing the questions?
Sure.
The first question, Aparna, can you describe your own personal journey that you have traversed personally and professionally to reach where you are? And when you began your career many years ago, did you ever imagine that you would be a leader in a male-dominated profession?
So I've had a fairly interesting journey. So maybe to answer your question did I ever think I would be where I am? So I think the answer is a big no. But the reason is not that much about the gender, right? I actually started and graduated as a master's in chemical sciences a zillion years back, and I actually got into a research lab, and I was all set out to be a scientist. I do have some publications in some biochemistry journals to kind of validate that. And it was just purely by chance that I got into tech in the late 90s. And this was actually a time when I had to take a career break when I had my first child, and very, early in my profession. But in a way, if I reflect back, I got into tech and started with a startup and then kind of never looked back. So through this last 20 plus years, I started with an engineer, did development, did data, did product management, built an analytics practice. So it was a very nutritious journey of learning both technology along the way, as well as these different functions. And as this technology was growing and getting disrupted every few years, And it was also a very fruitful journey from being like the 12th engineer to get hired in this startup. And this was a Silicon Valley based startup who had their engineering and R&D in India, to the acquisition of this organization that happened in 2017. And in the last 7 years, I was leading the as MD for the engineering and research division. So it was I would say it was a big enriching and learning experience for me, because we went through a lot of ups and downs. I think everyone is aware about the e-commerce bust in 2001, the big economic downturn in 2008. I mean, a lot of these moments almost disrupted us, but I think what kept going was how good the product was and how good the platform was, and we were able to kind of not just survive but kind of come out of these lows and really go to the market with a strong value proposition. And if I reflect back, the one underlying theme, especially as I reflect back on this journey, has been learning. Like, I've just tried to use the opportunity to learn as much as I could along the way. And as I said, not necessarily limited to the tech part of it.
Awesome. Very, very inspiring, Aparna. The next question, and as a women leader, I'm sure you would have had barriers in your career also. So what is the most significant barrier in your career, and what was your secret mantra to overcome those barriers?
So I think the barrier for me, and not really a barrier, but that self-doubt was probably the biggest barrier, right? So it was in my own head, right? So whether it was to switch careers, whether it was to take a break and try and balance the work life as I was going through this journey, it was more about just staying there. So again, it was more about that realization that your career journey is basically a marathon, right? It's not a sprint. And for you to be good at marathon, the traits that you need are very different from what you need in a 100-meter kind of a sprint, right? And I think that was a realization that really kept me going. And every time that self-doubt kicked in, that's something that really stayed with me. The second part of it was more around just learning from people around me, right? So whether they were allies around me in form of bosses, in form of peers, in form of my own team members, that aspect of how do you learn and how do you lean on your ally to really have a more nutritious kind of career, and help remove barriers when they came, was, I think, the second part. Now, were there naysayers in the journey? For sure. I mean, I think, and we all deal with it. It's probably not even specific to genders, but I think that is where at least I leaned more on let my work speak for itself, and how do we, and of course, whenever the opportunity came to really collaborate and take it head on with the naysayers, and create that working environment where you build that trust, and you really create a stronger group of people who can work together and make good things happen.
So great, Aparna. You talked about allyship, and as a women leader, you were also leading the Women ERG Charter for Microsoft India. Can you just explain what is the charter of this ERG, and what are the specific interventions that are being taken to strengthen the career of women in Microsoft and otherwise?
Sure. So before I go there, maybe I just want to share that one reason I'm very passionate about women in technology is it's almost like a pay ahead or giving back, because just having these role models during my journey, being able to talk to them, being able to learn from them, I believe has really augmented and enhanced my career journey itself, right? And especially to your earlier question on the barrier, that every time if there was a barrier, I think there was this opportunity to be able to talk about it and to learn from others' experience. And it was not necessarily always to talk, but even observe people, and which is why I feel like the role model part is so important in a journey, and especially for women in tech's journey. Coming to your question on the employee resource group, so just a little bit about what an ERG or an employee resource group is at Microsoft. So we have some of these ERGs, as we call them, which focus and get these communities together. And these are passionate employees who obviously have their day jobs, but they come together to really work on this, that particular theme, and try and run different programs to really help augment the career and the journey of the employees. So just to give you an example, we have ERG for people with disabilities, we have ERG for LGBTQ, and similarly we have an ERG for women. Now coming to the women ERG, and as a chapter lead, which basically means all Microsoft entities of in India, so which includes Microsoft Research to our development center IDC, as well as the sales and marketing organization. This team is again a passionate set of volunteers who come together to kind of drive a journey of onboarding, nurturing, and really growing women's career at Microsoft. And the way we do it is throughout the year by defining different programs based on the listening circles that we have with the larger women community. And so it could range from setting up an allyship program that I spoke about, even something very day-to-day like managing finances, creating panel discussions, even especially in times of pandemic, just how women leaders or just everyday different role individuals are dealing with this, and how are they kind of managing this new work-life balance in this situation. Skilling, so there could be technical sessions. I mean, we have literally had Azure Fundamentals as one of the training that was done purely for all the women engineers at a partner forum, for example, so not limited to Microsoft alone. So the goal and the objective really is to empower women in their journey, career journey, and just providing all the right or as many enablers as we are able to.
Great. Aparna, we at Microsoft have been very lucky to get you as a role model. But in the closing comments, what would your advice be to the women who want to build their career? It's outside of Microsoft. We have a whole group of audience here. What is your advice? And one question that I keep getting in all the conversations that I have is a career or a formal education in STEM essential to have successful career in technology?
So I think I kind of answered that question earlier, which is that, yeah, I don't have a formal degree in tech. I do have a formal tech degree, but in chemical sciences. So it's not, I'm not a software engineer by education. So yeah, so I don't think I need to answer that further. On the other hand, I think what is absolutely essential is the principle that I spoke about earlier, which is learnability, right? Just embracing the fact that you are open to learning and you just have that curiosity, stay curious, learn, have that mindset. And especially in the times that we live in, I think if we are very, we are very conscious of this, we are very open to embracing change, and we are able to adapt, because those are kind of the underlying thematics that each of us needs to have. Now, once that is there, I think there can almost be a framework that each of us can define for ourselves, depending on which career you want to pursue. So again, reflecting back on, let's say, the AI skill set that I spoke about, or the top roles I spoke about. So let's say if one of you chose one of those, like you want to become a data engineer, just as an example, right? So the way then you could go about it is to create an actual plan to say, how do I let me study, what are the options, like how can I identify the skills that I need. So there are assets like LinkedIn Economic Graph that can help you do that, but there are others, right? And then be able to say, okay, I'm setting this objective, and the objective has to be set on a particular time. Otherwise, yeah, you'll just lose because there'll always be high priority things coming along the way, right? And then be able to say, okay, what is my where am I and what is my target state, and how do I get to that state? What is going to be my learning plan in the next 1 quarter, 2 quarter, 1 year, whatever it might be. And then comes that, how do I go and find the resources? So again, in context of Microsoft, we have assets like MS Learn, there is LinkedIn Learning. But again, there are a whole lot of other avenues of both free and paid. And I think we just saw a burst of that in context of pandemic, where a lot of the top universities globally shared so much of open content for us to go and learn. Last but not the least, don't give up. right? So perseverance, right? That once you have your objective, you know the plan, you know your gap, you figured out which course to do, then it is all about execution, right? So the perseverance is, the last but not the least, that can really take you in a long way. And then in terms of maybe the last part of your question, which is that, how can that lead to maybe a tangible kind of asset for yourself? So just like whether they are degrees and certifications, I mean, those are one part of it. So in context of that, whether it is Microsoft or any other tech organization, there are a whole lot of certifications that are available. There are ways for you to be able to talk about it, but I think the key part is that you know what you know, but do others know what you know? And so one kind of element that is good to keep in mind is that what kind of online brand are you creating up for yourself as you go through this journey, right? Because that's, and today, whether it is on LinkedIn, and we know that when people hire, it's a given that your social media is something, your that would be something that they will look at, right? So what kind of brand are you building? Are you if let's say you are an expert on blockchain, right? Then are you actually commenting on it? Are you writing about it? Are you giving a point of view when there is a really good blog that comes out? I think that just augments or kind of nurtures the knowledge that you build along the way.
Yeah, thanks, Aparna. Thanks for sharing your insight and the pearls of wisdom for all of us. Women, I mean, I think the underlying message here is that we all need to have growth mindset and keep investing in building relevant skills for the future and build your own personal brand, as Aparna just suggested. So all the very best.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Indrani.
Thank you, Aparna and Indrani.